Here's my 2 cents worth. Mental health is a bigger epidemic than any disease in this country, and not only do we need to discuss it more, but we need real solutions to the problem. I'd like to start by saying there are an infinite number of sub-problems in this larger problem that surround mental health, and it would take me over an hour to go over absolutely everything. But I wanted to at least touch on a few points and what we could do to at least mitigate the issue in this country. Firstly, as I mentioned last week, the COVID-19 pandemic played a big part in making mental health worse in this country. According to Boston College researchers, quote, during the first 9 months of the pandemic, Americans reported rates of depression and anxiety 6 times higher than in 2019. An estimated 26% of Americans ages 18 and older, about 1 in 4 adults, suffers from a diagnosable mental disorder in any given year, according to Johns Hopkins. Now, while I do believe the openness about mental health has gotten better in recent years, and there is more awareness about the issue, we still have a long ways to go. Suicide rates have increased by over 30% from 2000 to 2018, and in 2020, suicide was among the top 9 leading causes of death for people ages 10 to 64. Suicide was the second leading cause of death for people ages 10 to 14 and 25 to 34, according to the CDC. One problem for those who deal with this is social isolation, and that can stem from many things. One being the stigma or fear of those coming out and asking for help from others, as they don't want to have an image of being weak or be looked at in a negative way. That's not even mentioning how society blames things like mass murders and mass shootings on mental health, which can make those who are peaceful dealing with that issue and their struggles feel like they may be a threat, thus worsening the issue. And the truth is, if someone is going to mow down dozens of people in a school or shoot out of a window into a crowd, they obviously have something wrong in their head. But it's like a friend of mine said, quote, people will point their fingers and say, oh, they were so mentally ill, there was nothing that could be done about it. It was only a matter of time. Instead of actually having a legitimate discussion of what we can do to make matters better so that these conditions aren't aggravated and help people get into better health. Another issue when it comes to stigma revolves around athletics. According to a recent NCAA survey, quote, when asked if they would feel comfortable seeking support from a mental health provider on campus, less than half of women's sports and men's sports participants answered that they would agree or strongly agree with that statement. 48% and 46% respectively in the survey. Now, there are many things related to sports that can lead to poor mental health, such as stress and competitive pressure, all the way to things such as injuries or social media. Once again, while more athletes have come out and spoken about their struggles, not every athlete is given the respect they deserve. Naomi Osaka, one of the best women's tennis players in the world, got a great response from people following her confession of having mental illness. But not the same can be said about Simone Biles, as some people, such as Piers Morgan, called Biles withdrawing from the Olympics due to mental health issues a, quote, excuse. This can sway some athletes to not come out and express how they feel. Even Michael Phelps, for example, staying on the Olympic side, he contemplated taking his life at one point, and he said, quote, I can speak from an athlete's perspective of being a male and being an athlete. If I was to speak up during my career, I would feel like it would be a sign of weakness. And we're giving our competitors that edge. And in sports, or basically kind of in a battle, it's like you can't give your competitors that edge. This proves that there's still a stigma for many, even at a high level. We preach wellness so much nowadays as a society, but we only spend roughly $250 billion a year on mental health services, and while that may sound like a lot, consider that mental health accounts for an average of just 2% of the country's health budgets, and of this, around 60% of that 2% is spent on psychiatric hospitals. Which gets into my next point, accessibility and cost. According to the Center for Primary Care at Harvard Medical School, quote, despite over 90% of general health care services being billed through insurance plans, an estimated 45% of psychiatrists do not accept any form of insurance, and a much larger proportion accept only a very limited set of plans, making it extremely difficult for patients to find suitable in-network referrals. Basic mental health evaluations can cost roughly $100 to $200 per session, and a typical session is between 45 to 55 minutes long. For some, that isn't long enough, but the issue is there aren't enough therapists or psychiatrists to allocate the time needed for some patients. In fact, a 2018 study in the American Journal of Preventive Medicine found that a majority of non-metropolitan counties, 65%, don't even have a psychiatrist, and almost half of non-metropolitan counties, 47%, don't have a psychologist. It's also not easy to become a mental health counselor or a psychiatrist, as A, you need a bachelor's degree, B, a master's degree, and C, pass licensing exams or complete postgraduate clinical work. And of course, this doesn't come cheap, and not everyone has tens of thousands of dollars or wants to deal with student loan debt. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline recently changed its number to 988 to make it easier for those in need, which is great, except that 1 in 6 calls with the old number between 2016 and 2021 never reached a counselor because the person disconnected. It's even worse for the texting and online chat lines, which together fielded another 1 million contacts last year, not attending to 41% of texts and 73% of chats. Many of the southern poor states in the nation saw it the worst. South Carolina and Louisiana each only have 1 call center in their state, and other states such as Minnesota and Wyoming have had periods with no centers at all. A woman from Michigan who said that she waited twice for over an hour before hanging up likened the experiences to calling airline customer service, except she was seeking suggestions on not killing herself. A teenager from Mississippi recounted calling 3 times one night without getting through and then overdosing. Fortunately, both of those people are still alive today, but many others aren't. And that's just it. If we put more funding into education or departments with mental health programs, we may potentially be able to have more people and resources to help those in need. I hope you've enjoyed the non-political part of the video so far, because now I'm going to get political a little bit. Firstly, the issue of lack of funding happens in states that are run by either party. Neither of them know how to budget the most important things. What really frustrates me though, however, are people like Greg Abbott of Texas, who mentioned that Uvalde was a mental health issue. Except he cut $211 million from departments that oversee mental health programs. In addition, Texas ranks last out of all 50 states and the District of Columbia for overall access to mental health care, according to the 2021 State of Mental Health in America report. Others like Mark Gordon, the governor of Wyoming, have also cut mental health care in recent budgets. Here's an idea. You don't get to put the burden of all of these tragedies on the mentally ill if you're going to turn around and not do jack shit for them in return. On the flip side, I would like to give credit to Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, who has signed multiple mental health bills, including one that requires schools to tell parents of additional mental health care services and resources if students are already receiving services. I'd also like to touch on a few other things here. Firstly, I wanted to share some thoughts that I've actually gotten from you guys. I talked to you guys on social media about this on the topic, and after this I'll make my closing argument. I've heard some great ideas, from anything from requiring classes in high school that focus on mental health and building networking skills to things as simple as just eating right and exercising. There's clearly not a one-size-fits-all solution to solving this issue, but it's definitely important to surround yourself with exciting hobbies or a caring group of people. This, of course, I understand isn't easy for everyone. It's also obviously important to point out that each person doesn't experience the same struggles. So reach out and have conversations with people and be supportive of one another. There's also a number of low-cost options for care that include clinics at universities, for example. To close out, systematically, what we could do a lot more to mitigate this issue on a national scale, whether that be basic funding of departments and programs, to hiring more callers, to hiring more psych workers, and making it easier for people to get involved with therapy and related occupations. My proposal is not only should we have Medicare for all in this country, we should have mental health care for all and official providers for everyone like we have with other medical experts. One thing is for sure, we need to stop just talking about it as a problem and start actually discussing real solutions, because lives are on the line. And finally, last thing, let's also provide more funding for our veterans. Many who have been ignored when they've come home back from fighting a war that they shouldn't have fought in the first place, and now have to deal with struggles such as PTSD, amongst other disorders, and have been sadly ignored by our government. But I'll save more on that topic for next week. And that's my 2 cents worth. Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in. I mean, this is an issue where I could have gone on way more. I could have talked about social media, news, culture, society as a whole. I could have talked about a million different things, but I wanted to touch on what I felt was most important with it. Please tell me your thoughts. If you guys have any thoughts on this issue, what we could do to better mitigate it, agree, disagree with me, please let me know in the comments below. But as always, thank you guys for watching. Until next time, take care, have a great week, peace out.